Hello there, back again for another sort of quirky, sort of chatty video, I guess would be the way to go. This time, as you can see here, I wanted to talk about something that I love so much that it has fallen apart. So back when I was getting into tabletop wargaming, Warhammer 40,000 was the first game that I played and really enjoyed, and then slowly moved over onto Warhammer Fantasy. But one of the games that kind of stuck with my group in particular was Mordheim. So this was actually my friend's book. You'll probably see some of his doodles in certain areas of the book. But when we played this, we were looking for something to do that would kind of scratch that campaign narrative style itch. We'd now got into role-playing games at that point, and so Mordheim was a really great way for us to sort of delve into storytelling in role-playing games, in miniatures games, without going the sort of whole hog, I guess. And so what we did is we bought a couple of warbands. As you'll have seen from the start of the book, one of the big things was the kind of militia kit that they did at the time. See some of the models in this are from the militia kit. Some of these have been kit bashed from other ones. But the militia kit was fantastic for this. So we'd play as Reichlanders and Marienburgers and the followers of Ulrich in Mordheim. And we just dived into playing the game and thought it was fantastic. We played many sort of like campaigns. Some of them were slightly more ad hoc. Some of them were a little bit more focused. We did one where we just literally just played games against each other. We'd come and see each other for the day, and we'd be like, right, cool, today, Rich is going to play Jack and Ben's going to play Tom, kind of thing. And we'd just do that. Other times we played more structured ones, like, for example, we played a campaign where one of the players didn't actually have a gang. They kind of looked after a set of sort of NPC-based gangs, almost like a GM, and then we played gangs that would have to deal with the outcome of the situation as they were, finding themselves in. We also played like a really long-running one that was all about hunting down this wizard who had I think it was called the Soul Engine, we called it, which was affecting all the different people in Mordheim, the City of the Damned. And so we played a whole bunch of different campaigns, and we didn't just use the warbands that you saw presented in the rulebook. We expanded things out. We looked at Beastmen, we looked at Bretonnians, we looked at, I think it was the Shadow Elves, the High Elf warband. So one of our group played the Carnival of Chaos, which people will be familiar with probably. And we had a really good time with it. We came up with some house rules here and there, which was always good. So we limited certain things and that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I just really enjoyed about the game itself was how much character Games Workshop were able to build into this world. The designers of this and the artists behind it, I think, did an absurdly good job. Rick Priestley, Alessio Cavatore, and Tumas Pirinin did a fantastic job on the mechanics, and then you have Gav Thorpe obviously helping with some of the storytelling in here as well, which is quite nice. And then you've got all those amazing art pieces. So you've got Jeff Taylor, who worked on this, John Blanche, Dave Gallagher, Noala Kennedy, Karl Kopinski as well, John Wrigley. Some amazing artists that took part in creating this world and building a game out of effectively one little city in the middle of a massive empire within the Warhammer world. I think one of the first things to discuss then really is sort of like why I like what drew me to this. And I think one of the main things was the aesthetic. I think the aesthetic of Mordheim is pure Warhammer grimdark. It is John Blanche. It is the twisted stuff of Kapinski. It is the weirder stuff that Adrian Smith put together when he was illustrating more of Warhammer as well. And it's just present in everything about the game, from the way that it's presented in the margins, through to the small incidental pieces of artwork that you get, through to the text, through to the page headers, through to the mechanics as well. Like, looking at this game, it's hard not to want to go back and start making another Mordheim Warband now to play the game with, which I think is fantastic. And then it inspires this kind of thing. Like, the other thing that's really nice about this, and it's why I think games like Frostgrave, Rangers Shadow Deep, and other skirmish games have been so successful, is that it engenders a sense of creativity and kit bashing and stuff like that. Like, this page like sparks the imagination. This was back when you had, admittedly, possibly quite, basic kits, but you had so many different options that you could sort of tag onto the models, from sort of arms and legs and heads and that kind of thing, that you could create all sorts of different creations. Like, I made a warband where I made a guy that was based off this guy, and he had a missing leg, but he had a crossbow, and I kind of made a wooden leg for him because he'd lost it during the games and stuff, which I thought was really nice. And you could just have fun with all the terrain as well. I mean, we never went to the lengths of using a lot of the official plastic stuff. A lot of our terrain was kind of based out of boxes and takeaway containers. But it was still something that kind of got the creative juices flowing, and I think that's what still sticks in people's minds now, is the idea that you could dive in and just have fun with Mordheim and not take it too seriously, because it's got that dark fantasy edge to it, that almost black comedy edge, and just really let your head down when it came to this. It was also mechanically, the game was, fairly in depth, but it wasn't so in depth that you'd have to keep referring to the rulebook all the time. Once you'd learnt the basics of the game, it was pretty easy to just, dive in and start playing every day, or every weekend or whatever. The real depth came in the way that the warbands that you created changed and evolved over time, and sort of where they went as your story unfolded. Now that obviously then throws up interesting problems, I guess you'd say. Like, all kind of warband games have balancing mechanics in them, because people can just lose constantly. You could just be not very good at the game, or you've made a bad warband, or your dice just aren't with you when you're playing the game, and from that point on, you'll just be getting lower and lower in the rankings, and then eventually everybody will die, or your opponent will just get really, really good. Now, that was obviously very prevalent in Mordheim, but that's where you used house rules and all sorts of things to kind of balance things. Maybe you did team-up missions, maybe you changed scenarios and that kind of thing. But I think one of the nice things about the game as well was that it was, to a degree, sometimes quite unfair. I think one of the interesting things about gaming over the last however many years, maybe 3 or 4 years, has been this move towards things having to be very balanced. And I think one of the nice things about role-playing games is that inherently, most of the time, things aren't balanced, and you will have to deal with situations that arise in interesting and innovative ways. And I think that's what this offered to wargames, was that idea of asymmetry, the idea of, using storytelling and creative thinking to make up reasons why you should carry on playing the game. So your warband's lost like 3 of its members. Cool. Maybe they then team up with one of the other warbands to try and take out the people that killed your leader or something. Like, come up with interesting ideas and stories for your games rather than just constantly feeling like you have to do an evenly matched battle between 2 warbands every single time you sit down to play. I think it's what Frostgrave has achieved really nicely with the fact that it can be played cooperatively in solo, and also moving away from the idea that the scenario has to be all about killing people, and it's actually more about getting treasure. I think that's one of the things that people really forgot about Mordheim, was that it wasn't about kill. It didn't necessarily have to be about killing. It could be about a whole manner of different things. It could be about finding loot. It could be around, saving someone who was captured and all that kind of thing. And people just stuck around for a really long time in games rather than, booking it and leaving when things went badly. A game doesn't have to take 2 hours when it could take 45 minutes, and you could do what you needed to do as a warband and then quit the field kind of thing. But yeah, it's an interesting one that I think should be explored in a little bit more detail. As you can see from here, there's like loads of interesting ideas for how to do campaigns. Hidden treasure ones, surprise attacks, occupation missions, all that kind of stuff. And I think the game kind of balanced itself out once you sort of stepped into the realm of once you stepped into the realm of groups becoming more au fait with what they were trying to do. Obviously, this and Necromunda kind of sit side by side in most people's minds, but I think that the fantasy elements and what Mordheim offered was the really big draw for me. I think they did a really good job. I mean, look at that as a piece of artwork. It's just fantastic, and tells you exactly what it's like living in Mordheim. These people hiding from bats that are probably going to suck their face off in a second. I also loved all these little cutouts where we got the kind of perspective of what it was like to be in Mordheim from one of the people that's been there for ages, one of the veterans and things. And yeah, I think it's really great. When it comes to the warbands themselves, I think what really drew me in was the witch hunters. I think the witch hunters were my favourites, but we'll just go through those here anyway. So we had the mercenaries. So you had Reichland, who were very good at shooting, Middenheim, who were much stronger, and then Marienburg, who had loads of money and hired lots of people. You had the Possessed, which were your Chaos Warband that had mutants and one of the most powerful models in the game, the Possessed. One of those. You have the Witch Hunters, who were my favourite warband, who came with warrior priests and witch hunter captains and stuff, and you had badass dogs and zealots and things. They were a really cool warband, very flavourful. The Sisters of Sigmar, which no one ever really played, but I think they're really fun, and it would be good to see them come back in whatever Games Workshop do in the future. I think they were a really cool idea. I wish I'd played them more, but it was harder to find female models back then, so you couldn't really do it unless you bought the metal models, and the metal models were expensive, so not a lot of people did it. But they were really awesome. You have the Undead, so you could have a vampire, which again was one of the most powerful models in the game. Necromancers and zombies and stuff, so good if you already had a Vampire Count's army, you could play as those. And then you had the Skaven, who a lot of people played as well, that could have a few more models, up to 20 in this warband. Had the Assassin Adept, and then a whole bunch of other cool miniatures in there. You had plastic kits for them, which were great. So, a really awesome option for you there. And this was the thing that I think was quite good, because Skaven, you could buy the Gut Runners kit or the Night Runners kit, and you were away, just buy a few metal models, maybe 1 or 2 for your main characters, and you were sorted. Undead, you could just buy the zombies and the skeletons kits and use those. Maybe a few metal ghouls and things, but you could more or less get away with just using the plastic kits from back in the day. Sisters of Sigmar, unfortunately, all metal, which was the real issue. Witch Hunters, you could make the bulk of your force using the mercenary kit, the free company kit, and then maybe throw in a few metal ones. But they also had a lot more of the aesthetic of the kind of later flagellants that they did in plastics, which weren't really available when we were playing, but they were kind of like a halfway house. Them, you could do it with plastic models from the free company kit, but you kind of really wanted to pick up maybe metal warrior priest or a metal witch hunter and stuff, just to kind of build on the force. Cult of the Possessed, again, a little bit more on the metal side, I guess you'd say, when it came to models that you needed. But you could probably get away with buying some one of the Marauder kits maybe, and using that as your kind of way into the game. Just do a little bit of green stuffing or perhaps to kind of add hoods and cloaks and things. And then, of course, the mercenaries were really easy to do because you could make all of them using the free company kit, which was always good to see. And here you go. This was a really cool sort of like breakdown of all the factions and what people thought of them, which I thought was really nice. So yeah, it was a really fun little game. Mechanically, like, you know, it's not too heavy on rules. It used the same system as Warhammer Fantasy. So you had movement, weapon skill, which was obviously an opposed test. Strength and toughness, again, opposed. Initiative there as well. Leadership for checking morale. Movement was fairly simple. It was kind of, you know, you could either run or you could just generally move. You could do diving charges and all sorts of things like that. So here you go. You can see the traditional to wound tables and the traditional ballistic skill tables and that kind of thing. You had critical hits and stuff in there as well, which was always nice. Weapons had different qualities to them. You could be stunned and knocked down, or you could be full up, taken out of action, which was quite cool. Armor would soak damage, but it rarely did the job, to be honest. Yeah, and armor could be modified by strength as well. So, you know, sometimes you could be wearing heavy armor with a 5+ armor save, but didn't matter if the guy was strength 5, he was still going to kick your ass. And even then, if they were strength 4, still -1 to that, so you'd be taking it on a 6+. And yeah, so here are all the weapon qualities and what they did, which was quite cool. Breaking down all the different elements there, which was nice. And gameplay was brutal, to be honest. It was nasty and horrible and deadly, and it was definitely one of those games where you had to kind of tactically think about where you were going to go next with your characters and sort of how much you'd put on the line, as it were. I always liked the dramatis personas in this as well. I always tried to hire a troll slayer if I could, because I still liked dwarves even then. But you had Anya Sword of Twilight, who I turned into a Felix Jaeger. Johann the Knife. Bertha, who was really cool. And Vestic. I always liked Uli and Makand, who were added in later in Town Crier magazines and stuff like that, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it was a good game that I think was really fun. I always liked having something like a designer's notes at the back as well, so you can get a feel for what people were considering. This is something completely different, but maybe I'll go into that in a future video. There you go. You can see one of the warbands that was scribbled out in the back for the Minnenheimers by one of my friends. I guess the other question to consider then is, where do I think people should go when it comes to Mordheim now? I would recommend, even now, trying out Mordheim. You can probably find this online somewhere. I know there's a lot of people who have tried to condense all the core rules and all the town crier articles into a single place, so you can basically play Mordheim without having to worry about finding this original rulebook. There is also a fan version of Mordheim called Coreheim that I think is okay, but I think lost a lot of the character of Mordheim. It was maybe too fair again, which is a really weird thing to say. Like, it felt like everything was balanced to just be like, everything feels more or less the same, which I didn't really like. And while obviously a lot of people will enjoy that for the more slightly competitive element of things, I don't think it had the same character as the original Mordheim rules. As I say, being unfair, really, and brutal and horrible. So yeah, I still reckon you'll be able to get into Mordheim. I'll see if I can find some links and put them down into the comments down below or in the description of the video, so that you've got some access to the content that has been preserved by great members of the community. Do I think Games Workshop are going to bring Mordheim back? That's an interesting question. I once posed this to someone who had worked with Games Workshop, and they said that the impetus is there within certain members of the design faculty, I guess, the design team, but it's about trying to make it so that it will be worth the money and the investment and the time that it would take to bring the game back. And would it look like it did in the old days? Probably not. It would probably look a lot more like the new Necromunda, I would imagine. But in saying that, we have Warhammer Underworlds, which is a skirmishy game in Age of Sigmar that a lot of people quite enjoy. And we have Warcry as well, which is set within the Age of Sigmar and offers a skirmishy option as well. Now, with the return of the Old World, which is hopefully coming in the next couple of years, that's when I could see people looking towards Mordheim and bringing that back alongside the old version of the rules from 8th edition, perhaps, as well. I think that the Old World is also a perfect setting. Well, it is set in a perfect time frame to bring back Mordheim, because they've already said they're going to be rewinding the clock a couple of hundred years, probably to around the time of Magnus the Pious. Now, during the time of Magnus Pius, he did burn down Mordheim, but that was only after he'd done his great campaign against Chaos. So this seems like that would seem like the perfect time to go back to the Old World, re-explore the factions in using sort of Warhammer Fantasy Battles rules, and then add in Mordheim alongside the release of the Old World, so that you had a really cool way to play the game once more. And as it has been proven, people will buy your made-to-order miniatures. If you made these miniatures from Mordheim available again as metal packs, people would buy them up. I would definitely buy a Witch Hunter Warband. I would definitely buy a Sisters of Sigmar Warband. I would even buy some Possessed. I mean, just look how amazing these miniatures were back then. I mean, they're great now anyway, but I absolutely love these miniatures. And it will be amazing to see them back on the tabletops in the future. So yeah, that was just my kind of love letter to Mordheim and why I really liked it and why I really enjoyed it. It would be nice to hear in the comments down below what you thought of Mordheim. Was it a game that you really enjoyed? Did you not really get on with it? Did you do lots of converting when you played the game? Did you not? Did you just use the metal models? Was it a big part of your gaming group? Would you like to see it come back? How would you like to see it come back? Should they change the rules? Should they keep them the same? Should they reduce? Should they produce? All the old models once again. How would you go about it? As always, make sure to like and share the video if you enjoyed my ramblings on Mordheim. Maybe I'll shelf some of the models that I've painted for Mordheim in the future. That could be kind of cool. And yeah, I'll be back with another video very soon. As always, it would be very nice if you could subscribe and like and share and all that kind of thing. There's also a Ko-fi link, so if you're interested in donating to me and helping me out in producing these videos and maybe picking up some cool new models and stuff, that would be really awesome as well. You don't have to. I'm just happy that you're here and watching the video. But yeah, have a look at Mordheim yourself and see what you think. Maybe you completely missed out on this and you really wanted to dive in and give it a go. That'd be awesome as well to hear about that. But yeah, it's a great game. Bring it back, Games Workshop. And I will see everybody back on Because of Dragons very, very soon. Now I need to work out how to put this back on the shelf without all of the pages falling out and it collapsing into ruin. Oh dear. Maybe I should get this rebound or something. Ugh. Anyway, that's a problem for me and another day. Bye for now.